All right, 82L, welcome to a special release of Mind for the Game podcast. Rhino is currently driving across the United States, location unknown, heading home in some way. So we're going to get the full live episode out to you guys in the near future. But for now, we're going to do a mid lane focus episode. There's been some discussion in chat about who are the best mid laners this season. A lot of people are thinking there's a bunch of A tier and S tier players, and we're gonna kind of break down for you because that's never the case. We have to go out there, put our names out there, and talk about our real opinions. Who is good, who is not, and so we're gonna leverage some of Chev's excellent mid lane knowledge. He's gonna talk to us about how if you don't have 70 CS by 10 minutes, you're not playing it correctly. It's gonna be great. Rusty's here to join us as well to give his perspective. In the meantime, you're also going to see on your screen a little show match we did between two of our podcast hosts. I played my bronze tier invoker, really good. Chev was really enjoying my earn build where I built the wrong items for it in a 1v1, very big brain, and Rusty's legendary Void Spirit. So please enjoy the video in the background. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. I'm sorry to hear that Rhino's on the run from the law, and he is fleeing. He is on the run. So, wishing the best. Won't give away his personal location in case the FBI is listening, but yeah, doing well otherwise. Got a good pump at the gym,
Hey, I went to the gym too, like right before this.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. Apologies to all the fans for the most timely and schedule stable podcast host missing this week.
Quality, not quantity, guys, okay? Be glad you're even getting anything from us. Count your blessings.
Exactly right. So there's been some discussion on some other podcasts and the Conch chat on some tier listing of teams, kind of talking about where everyone sits. Who's fraud, who's gonna succeed, and who isn't. But in this particular case, I'm gonna focus on some of the preseason rankings and how the mid laners maybe have exceeded expectations, or maybe are holding their teams back in some cases. So I'm gonna focus on a little like teams here and there. I'm gonna call it a couple teams I think are interesting and worth talking about, and I want you guys to kind of give me your take. And the first one I think is the most surprising team to be in the top 8 or current playoff position, and that's Animal Enclosure. I mean, a team that's really gone through it, to say the least. And I think one of the more interesting players from the mid lane to evaluate how good they actually are, and that's Amir, or AZ. I've actually played a whole season with him, so I know him pretty well. Chev, you and him both have gotten the RNB Parasite in your time. So I'm just curious, like, what do you think of Amir as he ranks into the current landscape of conk mids this season?
And man, you're coming in hot with Amir on the first one. He's gonna hate me if I don't glaze him right now. Amir and I are good friends. I like him a lot. We chat a lot over Discord, believe it or not even about Dota. Just like friendly bullshit. So anything I say is definitely in love, but I think Amir is good. I think he got way better since you've played with him in Challenger. I think he's become a lot more of a team player and like follows more calls, is definitely more structured in the game, plays more meta as well. I know he used to be known for just being like a Nature's Prophet, Ember Spirit, Leshrac player. But now I think he'll just play whatever's meta and learn it. He's really good at Queen of Pain, these like impact mid heroes. He got pretty good at Puck. I won't yap too much about specifics, but I think Amir is solid. Like, I mean, do we want to know? Are you asking about like where he sits in comparison to other players?
That question's coming. I'm gonna ask Connor first, though. Rusty, I mean,
so
do you think Amir is a top 5 mid in Conqueror this season?
Top 5. I'm mentally going through all the teams right now.
And your answer can be different, right? It can be they are top 5 talented or they are a top 5 performer, because I think the answer can be different.
I'm going to go with mids based on what I'm seeing in the games and who I know that I would want to like team up with and rank them that way. I've also played some pubs with Amir and had him on my team a couple times. I think we've lost every single time. I think he has me muted in Dota now because I think I got really toxic in one of them. And yeah, so if you hear this, AZ, please unmute me. But I was fairly impressed with his gameplay and definitely thought he had improved a lot since I last saw him in the olden days of 8012. So I would say I'd probably take the mids from Slow Twitch, Muscle Fibers, Team Manatee Eater. I'd probably take AZ over Gavprint. I'll take him. I'd probably take Blunted. So I would say he's probably number 5. I'd probably put Chev, Phoenix, your mid. What's he go by? Morn?
Morn.
Yeah, Morn.
I'd probably put, from the games I've watched and looked at Dota Buff, I'd probably put Morn, Chev, Phoenix, and
Blunted.
who was the other one? Blunted.
Yeah.
I'd probably put them ahead. I'd put
Dude,
him
that's
number
crazy.
5.
That's crazy. We have the exact same top 5.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
I mean, it makes sense.
I would say those are good. Milk Boxy, I've actually Milk Boxy, he's my boy. Been on teams with him. I think he is genuinely also someone who's improved a lot. So between him and AZ, I think it's close. But they have a lot of different heroes that they play, and they play kind of a different style, I would say. AZ's more traditional. Arden's a bit more. He plays a little more like pause ones from mid at times, like Meepo. Tinker's a hero that inhales a lot of farm. I know some others. I mean, he plays some of the spirits as well, but he's typically, I'd say, a bit more like farm-oriented player, more win condition at times. Where AZ, I think you said, is more, can be more of the like team enabler. So I'd probably take AZ by a smidge at number 5 currently.
All right, well, Chev, Connor gave his best attempt to turn this into a Milkboxy content piece. But all things aside, do you agree with his take that Amir is a top 5 mid in Conk this season?
Yeah, I'd actually put him like directly in the number 5 slot, like
Wow.
Rusty said.
Amazing. So I think Amir, I think he's definitely, I don't know if he's top 5. I have to think a little bit about that. But he's definitely in the top 8 for sure. And I will say this much. I think he has lended a stable presence to Animal Enclosure. Maybe not as a captain. I can't say he's a top 5 captain with some of the things we've heard this season.
That's true. That's definitely
But
true.
I think his play on the court
What
has
do you
been pretty
mean?
good for them.
Very organized, very direct. You know, tells it like it is. All the things I'm hearing behind the scenes.
Let's cut him some slack. He's had a really hard start to the season, a really explosive start. So
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
being on a team for even 1 iota of 1 second with Malibu would be probably the most like mentally taxing thing I can imagine. So I will cut him slack. Quite literally dealing with mental asylum escapee. So, I wish AZ the best of luck in his recovery from what that difficult situation is.
I feel like that team is like a traveling circus, and they hired him to be the fire juggler, and then an elephant ran through the tent, and he burned down the entire tent down.
Yeah, I
And
love that Heart Run
he's
is
like,
on this
"Sorry,
team as
guys."
well.
Yeah, so
Heart Run
sorry.
being on that team as well is so perfect.
yeah.
All right, awesome. So, like I said, I want to focus on a couple players and just kind of get your guys' takes on them. So the next one is a fan favorite with a questionable name. I'd actually love to know the origins of this one, but
Oh, God.
Nigerian White
Boo!
Big
definitely
move.
upsets Rhino. But I think
I-
also
I
known
want to
as
say
Rory.
for the record, I am completely with Chev and Rhino. I don't like this guy, and any Buffles associate, I think you're scum.
Oh,
So
he's
I'm
even
gonna do
worse
a
now.
spit, patu. I spit on you, Buffles associate. You are fucking scum. I am on Team Chev and Rhino on this.
All right, so it sounds like you guys are in agreement that your personal rating of him is bottom tier, but
Very
he still
annoying.
has an opportunity to play some
Sure.
Dota, and I'm curious, do you guys place him as a top 8 mid in Conqueror this season, just on the Dota court?
Top 8 is such a low bar. I feel like he literally has to be by default.
I mean,
maybe.
there's 15 teams this season, dude. That's the midpoint.
So I only know 9 of the mid laners in this. If we're not counting SMD because we don't know who their
Yeah.
mid is, it changes.
I'm just ignoring that
Yeah.
team.
So
I'm just ignoring that team.
I really only know 9 of the mids. So out of the 9, I'd probably put him around the top 8. Yeah, sure. Yeah, he's definitely top 8 because I think he's better than Sojourn, who
Let's
has
say
the
top
number 9
6.
slot. for
Let's
me.
move it to top 6.
Okay, top
No,
6.
this guy's losing every game on Queen of Pain, the most bullshit hero. No, you stink.
I will.
You're not good. You
Alright.
stink.
You beat Chev on Queen of Pain.
I'm very good at
Chev, you
keeping. I'm very good at keeping my personal biases towards people aside when it comes to talking about them as a player. I've done it with Hexy a bunch, where like obviously I don't like Hexy very much, and we butt heads. But I think I have like respect for him in parts of his gameplay. So with Nigerian White or Rory or whatever he's going by, I'd probably put him at top 6 because I think his gameplay is a little bit better than Gabs and Milkboxy's. So yeah, I'll go 6.
Ooh,
He definitely has a really hard team to carry. I think if he's on a better team, he'd probably have more success. But his team sucks. They are really bad.
I'd say that could be a hot take, especially above Gavin. Obviously, Connor is very upset that you mentioned Milkboxy in any type of negative light, so that's pretty
No,
interesting.
I mean I've been critical of him in the past. I mean I've been on teams with him and attempted to shape him and help his growth. And he's probably done the same for me. I kind of stunk back then as well. But
Okay.
yeah, no, I think he's a person who has, as a mid laner, his flaws. Like early first 8 minutes can sometimes just randomly like fall apart on him. And but I think generally as the game goes on, if he doesn't get shafted by a superior laner, generally does pretty well. I've seen this guy Nigerian White. I've watched him play. I will say he's like decent. I mean, he's. I mean, you're a Divine 3 player. Like you better at least be decent at the game. But that being said, I do see him losing a bunch of games in 82L as Queen of Pain, and I just don't have respect for you if you do that. So you're going low on my list.
Love it. All right, now here's a player that I think is actually really interesting, and that's the Pool Pals mid, Steezy Van Jinkler, my wife's favorite name. We don't have to talk about it, but I'll just kind of give a quick opinion on it.
I don't know them. I know that my
Very
team
high
played
rank.
against them. My team played against Pool Pals this week without me, but I have no idea who their mid is or anything about the team.
He's putting up numbers even in the loss, which is generally a good sign.
Yeah, I think playing against them, this was someone that Hexy specifically called out as he thought he was going to be one of the best players in Conqueror this season. And I think Hexy knows his mids pretty well. So I was nervous playing against them. I mean, we pretty convincingly beat Pool Pals, and I think a lot of that was from a draft perspective. And I think Morn handled him pretty well. But I think he is a player that on a different stack, if given the opportunity to shine, I think you could be talking about as like a maybe like a Blunted-esque type of player where it feels like a game changer on a roster. But I think that particular roster, and they don't even have bad players. Like they have 2 other Divines who are pretty good, but they just haven't really put it together this season.
He did lose mid he drew mid against Shep last week, my stand-in, and he was playing Monkey King against Shep's Ember Spirit. So,
Oh,
I
yikes.
don't know.
Well,
And Shep
actually,
didn't
no.
go the right build.
I watched those games. That was because the sidelines were getting absolutely massacred, and he started rotating at like 6 or 7 minutes. I
See.
think.
Shout out Shep. I would
Who the
never.
hell is Shep?
Shep
Yeah, I
is,
think he was way ahead actually.
Dude, Shep's a first-time 82Ler, 100% win rate, 2-0 in his esports
Nice.
profile, standing in for me.
It's one letter apart. How different could it be? Wow.
So, all right, two more questions for you. I'm gonna pick one more player, and then I'm gonna ask you like a generalized question. See if you guys can pick a player out of the mix here. And so, I've heard you talk about Gav as a kind of a measuring stick for some of the other mids we talked about. Chev, can you talk to me about where you feel Gav fits in the mid landscape of Conquer this season, both from like a performance in his team, and then from like how talented of a player he is. And then Rusty, I think you know Gav well enough to comment on this one. So curious of what you guys each think of this particular player.
Yeah. Gav is obviously former Immortal player for a very brief stint, now Ancient, or something like that. And I think that they are a really high impact player, but extremely weak laner. So I think that Gav will have absolute pop off experiences. I think I said this in the chat at one point, but they'll have like crazy pop off games, absolutely carry their team, go 20 plus kills, while Benny's like feeding somewhere on the map, tilting his brains out on anti-mage. But I think that Gav struggles.
No.
I know about that. I think Gav struggles a bit when it comes to clutch situations and playoffs, and when the game is fully on their back. So I don't think, again, like mechanically not the strongest. And then I think that their rotations and map movements are kind of like erratic, which works really well sometimes because it's like, whoa, I'm like rotating everywhere and I'm just impacting the map and getting a million kills. But then if like the game is being played super structured by the enemy team, I think that they're going to struggle a lot. They're going to fall behind on farm. I think farming is one of their weak points. So again, when the game comes down to like, this is Gav's game to carry, I think that they struggle. And don't really adapt in their gameplay. Yeah, that's my take on Gav. But I think generally like really high impact, like really does a lot for Savage as a team. So I think they're a good player for Savage.
Yeah, I think fits well. I think we saw last season when the pressure's on them to kind of be the best player on the team's maybe not the strongest. Especially considering I think they do the drafting and strategy type of stuff as well. Which generally I think they have pretty good drafts, pretty good overall, like not doing too much crazy stuff. Yeah, no, I think from a mechanic standpoint, that's not my area of expertise, but I do recall from playing against them in the past some scrims, some various matches, so on and so forth. Agree, I think their strength is making some good ganks happen, causing chaos on the map. Likes to play a lot of different heroes, and so if, the patch dictates you need something from your mid, they're pretty flexible player, which I think can be good. It's easy to get lost in the sauce a bit, I think, when people have a ton of stuff on their plate that they can or want to play. But I do think the reintroduction of Benny has been good, and we're seeing Savage having some good success. I think they lost the first week and now have been winning most of their games. So I think they're a good player. Individually, I don't think they shine. There's a lot of good mids this season, but I do think they fit that team really well, and from a leadership standpoint is helpful. So nothing but positive things. I've also had mostly nothing but positive times playing with them in pubs and just generally interacting out in Discord and whatnot. So get a thumbs up from me.
Nice. Yeah, I there were a couple times actually where I had flexed to mid and played against Gav, and that really like on the surface should be a huge mismatch, but it didn't really feel that hard for me, and so I never had really held Gav in that high of a regard as like a player to be scared of. But the interesting thing is I actually played on Ozone's mini team with him, and I can see why this team continues to stick together and people want to continue to play Gav. It was really good to play with him, and he was funny that I said that because then he was beating Immortals in the mini like it was nothing.
Yeah.
So
I think people often put too much emphasis on laning phase, especially for
don't
mids.
tell
Everybody
Chev.
loves. I know, Chev, cover your ears. Because, well, I just think it's like an easily quantifiable thing. A lot of times, it's like, okay, we played this even matchup, like we did. I don't know, like Ember versus Storm. Is that an even matchup? I don't fucking know. But
Not really.
Okay, what's an even matchup? Give me an example.
Stormquap.
Okay, you got Storm versus Quap. This guy came out like, a level ahead and 20 last hits ahead, got more denies, whatever. It's like this easily quantifiable thing to be able to say, oh, this guy won the lane in a even matchup, like, they're a better player. But I think usually lane is like a third to a quarter of a Dota game. So I think people do tend to overrate it at times just because it's an easy thing to see. Oh, you got more out of this period of time. You had more money. You had more XP. But a lot of times, like I've said on this show before, a lot of my opinions come from either watching games or playing against people themselves. And I'm not always in the lane against them, especially not in mid. As we've seen with the replay, I'm not a mid player. So usually my assessment is less like how they do in that 1v1 and more like how do I feel they're doing stuff on the map. So for me, I think maybe I have a higher opinion of Gav than like some of the mid laners might, but that comes from seeing their impact in other areas.
Yeah, Gav looked really good this past week. Pango in particular looked really strong. So that actually translates me really well into kind of what might be our last question of the evening. I got a couple more in the bag if you want to, though. Which is, I'm curious if you guys had to pick one player of the mids in Conquer this season that their performance is the most important indicator of the outcome for their team. So, if they have a shit game, their team is most likely to lose. If they have a great game, their team is most likely to win. And I will give my answer first while you guys take a minute to look through the roster and kind of think about that. My answer is actually my wonderful co-host Chev. I think if Chev has a terrible game, I think your team is going to struggle a lot. I think that's kind of been consistent on a lot of teams that you've been on over the seasons. I think it was very evident last season, for example, playing against you. Despite having like players like Teju on the roster and like overall a really strong team, I think that you in particular struggle when behind sometimes. And I think when you're ahead and you get to play the map the way you want to, I think you can be one of the most dominant players on the server.
Thanks. I guess I'd agree with that. Like, I don't know. I think that I have a lot of bad habits in Dota where if I'm not having a good time, I tunnel vision on it, trying to break it, but and like enable my other cores to win the game for me. I think that's actually one of our success stories recently is me enabling Lorenzo to have his game. But I don't want to go off too much on that tangent. To answer your question, you're basically asking who's the most impactful player in terms of like if they have a shit time, they're gonna throw, and if they have a great time, they're gonna absolutely carry. Yes.
I mean, that's one way to look at it. So okay. I think like let's take it from that approach.
Yeah. Man, that's tough because I feel like that answer can be so many different people, and I think it's a weakness for sure. I don't think it's a positive thing. I guess I kind of want to go with Amir then, because I don't know more than enough to say, but I'm going to say Amir because I think when Amir has a great game, which he's had a lot of really great games this season, his stats show it on heroes like Quap. He's just owning. But I think when Amir has a bad game, he just feeds, like really feeds, and is really frustrating to play with as well, because he's just like, he'll like kind of let that frustration out and like just say like I'm feeding, I'm fucking up, I'm playing so bad, which brings people down for sure. But I think then Amir has like games where he just looks like he's a numbered immortal player where he's completely owning. So I'd go with Amir for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I think the other way to look at it too is it's kind of who is the streakiest player, right? Who has the hottest hots and the coldest colds.
Yeah.
And I actually would say, as a response to your take, as I think Morn in particular is the exact opposite of that. I think he's kind of like the pinnacle of stability. And if you just look at his performances, like it's especially like Strats is constantly either giving him MVP or disrespecting what he did, but he has like, I was literally yelling in Discord this last week because I was like, I'm so tired of you having the highest hero damage on our team no matter what hero you're playing. This is really pissing me off. because I
Nice.
thought I was playing really well, and neither Cloud or I could ever pass him up, and he just kind of quietly owns. And I
Yeah.
think that's, I guess I'm looking for the opposite of that, you know?
I
Maybe
think
honestly, Wild Daddy, if he played mid, would be a good example.
I think that's exactly what you want in a mid laner, though. I think that's something I don't really provide, as you said, but I think that that's exactly what you want is somebody like Morn, you're saying, or honestly Phoenix. Phoenix is the opposite of that completely. Phoenix is like a player who, even if he has a horrible time, he'll like make things happen and have a lot of impact and be a really stable, like mentally stable player. Never tilts, like always a good vibe. Usually is having a good game, but even if he's not having a good game, he like figures out how to have impact. So yeah, shout out Moore and shout out Phoenix.
Yeah. I was gonna say Phoenix is one I've seen him mostly having good games and their team's just not winning that much. Same with Blunted, although TBD if OTF Team Only Fans has figured anything out, or if they might, or maybe just be strength of schedule merchants at the moment. I think, hate to bring my boy up again. I think Milk Boxy is a good answer to this one, honestly. I see the 3 games they've lost, maybe struggled, maybe not given the best hero. Like, I see Alk mid into some tricky matchups, like into Razor, into a lot of DC and high armor and stuff. So, I think that is like a tough one. And then also the games they lost recently, really struggling on Monkey King. The team kind of just fell apart. And then had a decent game on Pango, but overall, I mean, they had a stand-in this match, so I'm not sure I'm gonna put too much credit on it. But the other games looks like, he was pretty much set up for success, managed to contribute a lot, and they were rolling early on. So that might be my answer. I think AZ and Nigerian White are also decent answers. Seems like this Nigerian White team, like Chev said, is kind of crap. But maybe this guy can carry them sometimes, and we see some of really good performances in the games they've won, but pretty pedestrian numbers and impact in the games they have not. Including with broken heroes named Queen of Pain. So yeah, interesting. But those would probably be the 3 I'm looking at. Others, I see people having high impact, like this Steezy Van Jinkler guy. He seems to be having good games whether they win or lose. Same with Phoenix, Morn, Blunted, guys like that. So it's interesting the way that manifests sometimes.
Yeah. All right. So follow-up question, and then you guys let me know if you're ready to call it. Who do you think has the highest floor of every mid in the league?
I've seen Blunted doing well pretty much every game.
That's
I
probably
know
going to
he's
be
like
my
the
answer.
most universally glazed person.
Hmm.
I would probably say him or Phoenix. I still have a lot of respect for Phoenix from last season as well.
Oh, can
So
I
I'd say when locked in those guys probably.
Can I ask a clarifying question, I guess? Is do you think, like, when you say highest floor, do you mean like stat wise, like they're gonna personally have a good game, or like provide the most for their team and do the right thing that's required of them in the game?
I just mean overall performance. Like,
Okay, overall performance.
stats. Don't get lost in the stats. The
Yeah.
stat sauce is a lie most of the time.
I want to say Blunted, but also if Blunted's team is just getting destroyed, he's just gonna farm like kind of in the jungle, or if he's winning lane, he's gonna continue to win his lane. I don't think that Blunted I think Blunted's main weakness is that he plays for his own game and he ignores everything else going on sometimes, which is exploitable. And I think OTF's a pretty weak team besides Blunted. So that's why they're struggling, right? Even though he has a good time, like his team struggles and he's just like over there with his 3-0 stat line, never gonna die on Storm Spirit, but his whole team dies and he gets out last minute. And like, I think that's Blunted's weakness. So I don't necessarily want to say Blunted. But if we're talking like performance in terms of like I had a good game, then yeah, Blunted. But if not, I kind of want to say, I almost want to say Phoenix or Gav, honestly, because like I don't think Gav ever feeds. Like I think that they play I think they have a lot of impact for their team, and no matter what's happening in the game, Gav will get something done. So I think that every single game you're going to get something out of Gav, whereas every single game you might not get something out of me or Blunted or someone like that. So probably either Phoenix or Gav.
Fair enough. And your answer was Blunted, along with me, right, Rusty?
I think I like that Gav answer because I do think I seem to see Blunted doing consistently well. I'd say him or Phoenix, which is interesting because their teams are like not blowing the knocking anyone's socks off. So yeah, maybe just not as well balanced across the board on the roster.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that. There's going to be one hot take to close this out. And who do you think is the worst mid for the rank in Conqueror this season? So we've been so nice to everyone. It's time for you to nut up and give an answer about someone. And I'm going to go ahead and this is
worst for their rank. Any player or mid?
Mid player for the rank who has performed the worst.
What about the teams we don't
Nigerian
know?
White. This guy is a fucking dog.
I think that's objectively poor answer. My answer is going to be Sojourn.
I was literally Googling what his rank was when you said that. Probably. That team really stinks. I think that's a good answer.
I am surprised that team is not better, and
I'm not.
I have not seen anything from, I think he's Ancient 5. He was Divine last season. From him in particular to change the outlook of that team. So I know that we don't like to flame on the show, and that's not the intention of the question. But I think if you're going to be ranking people, you have to talk about the fact that some people just have to be the worst. That's just kind of how it goes in a competitive setting.
Fair.
Amen.
I am torn because I don't know. Like out of all the mids I know the best, it would also be Sojourn for me. Just because not as good as Milkboxy, Gav, Nigerian White, and then the top ones that we talked about earlier. But I think out of the mids I've played against, this is really not a fair accusation, I'll say, because I don't know them that well. But probably Chadinator from Crownfall Fishing Club. I think like it's a combination of like hero pools and also weak laning stage, and then really weak, mostly passive farming and like weak game impact. I think the more I learn about mid lane, the more I realize that it's not about stats and your game, because you're not the hero that's going to carry the game. It's about what impact you provide in the first 20 minutes to set your team up for success. And I think that Chadinator has a really low impact, kind of like, just low impact in the game. So that's my answer. But again, not entirely fair. Don't want to flame him because I don't know him that well. I've played against him like 3 times. So again, grain of salt with that one. Otherwise, it would probably be Sojourn.
Look, I appreciate you guys even answering the question.
I'd say Mango with an E on Jackson 5, maybe.
Yeah.
Haven't really seen much from that. Old 82 old head back in the day. No disrespect.
Yeah, but nobody lets him get his cheese. So, he's kind of one of those players where I think he relies on the cheese to make a difference.
He's only played 2 full matches, and they've lost 3 of them. And he's kind of been a nothing burger in them.
Yeah.
So that's a bit tough.
All right, well, that's a wrap. Jav, I look forward to you dicing it up on the edits.
I'll give you one more. Milk Boxy Divine 2. This guy is a fucking boosted animal. Boosted by me. Boosted by me. And he stinks.
All right. Previous seasons, when he first hit Divine, I might have agreed with you. But I actually think watching him play, because we had the prep for Jukes Angels, I was impressed with how well he played.
Arden got better for season.
I think his floor is higher now. Like, we were talking about floor. I think in the past, like when I was on a team with him a long time ago, and I'm gonna say this because, he's my boy, we're friends, and but sometimes he would really grief, like seriously, like tank the game to a almost unrecoverable level.
Dude, he started
just by getting destroyed.
He started Sage's Mask Winlay starting items in mid one game. Versus...
I do remember some very strange items might have just been like brain breaking at the worst possible time. But like some games he would own, but against, this was back when like Senpo was in there, some other really good mids, and whenever we had to play against those kind of guys,
You were shaking.
I would always be a bit worried and maybe, have to adjust the draft a bit to make it so maybe the lane is a bit less losable, or like just ignore the lane entirely. Like one thing we found that worked for us was picking Coddle back in the day, because you could just get 7-minute boots of travel and just like jungle and get insane money and ignore your lane and just turtle. But I do think his floor is higher now. I don't see the same kind of griefing happening these days too much, so I do think he's probably improved a lot.
I will get to see this week when I go up against him for the first time ever in on the 80-12 main stage.
You're gonna dodge. You've dodged every
Yeah.
time.
I dodged once. There's only one opportunity, and I switched to support. I think I gave Jamie the mid.
Actually, he dodged once as well, I remember, on Plinks of
Oh
Golf.
yeah, you're right. Okay,
Yes.
so
No, that season I remember that when I was.
And
hyped
we
for
had
that.
such a crap stand-in. I won't name who it was, but I'm gonna cope that that's why we lost.
yeah, this is the fabled matchup. I gotta go ping him real quick.
Yeah, go let him know that you're gonna be there no matter what.
All right, Chev, cut it up.
Yeah.
Again, apologies to the fans. Thank you guys for sticking around. I hope that you found the Conqueror mid lane content piece rewarding, and also some insight on how Void Spirit and Invoker matchup goes. It's not as Void Spirit favorite as everyone thought.
No.
So-
No apologies to the fans. You all are hogs at the trough, and you will be fed when we say it is time. You are not entitled to shit. And if I see you complaining in the chat, just know I'm virtually spitting on you from my little home office here, okay? Patuh! You get the content when you get it, you little piggies.